Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.
So I'm with Jonny Wilkinson of Equitise. Jonny, it's been ages since we've had you on the podcast, but great to do it in person.
Thanks for having me, good to see you.
Mate. So how have you found the Singapore Fintech Festival so far?
It's great. It's probably one of the best conferences I think I've ever been to. It's great to catch up with people you haven't seen for a while. A lot of the themes and the content are really stuff that hasn't been scratched away at properly in the Australian fintech ecosystem from what I've been exposed to. So it's been great. It's, always good to see people that you haven't caught up with in a while. Even people across the region that are doing interesting things or you've connected to pre-COVID and seeing them again. There's a lot of opportunity and it's quite beneficial for spending some time with those people and trying to get things going.
Yeah. So you touched on kind of some of the narratives that are really kind of being drilled down on at this conference. What's the one thing that you've got where you think, hey, this is going to be huge?
I think it's probably across the board that blockchain is finally actually starting to get proper use cases that's being supported by government, and particularly if you look at the Singaporean government and the MAS, they're actually investing in supporting and building out the infrastructure, a lot of different use cases and all these sorts of things that allow it to establish. So I think it's sort of, we're at the point it's finally coming to fruition. The actual technology and protocols are working and working in a scalable fashion, and then use cases are practically being applied that are making sense.
Yeah, there's a massive presence by blockchain, digital asset, kind of crypto firms here as well.
Yeah, that obviously I think the majority of the sort of companies presenting and sponsoring here are crypto alternative asset based. So that I'm sure is part of the theme, but it is obviously at that point in the evolution of the technology where it's finally taking hold, so it's great.
It's really surprising to me, this conference. I don't think I've seen a single banking as a service provider, and yet the 2019, that seemed to be the major theme, right? It was like everybody was here, big player out there.
Yeah, I think, obviously the market's evolved, where people are looking at investing in infrastructure, or even people that had a lot of money to invest in infrastructure and didn't know how they were going to apply it necessarily. There was opportunity for those sorts of things. Obviously consulting groups, agencies, software groups that, enterprise sales, software solutions had that desire and saw a space. I think obviously efficiency and shortage of money and time has whittled that away, so people aren't just out there trying to throw money at solutions and getting people to build them a solution and a platform. So it's good to see. I hate inefficiency. I hate sort of seeing big groups or corporates being encouraged to invest in things that are just poor attempts at sort of innovation. So it's good. It's great to see.
Another thing that's really kind of struck me is the problems that everybody's discussing seem to be universal, right? Real focus again on how do we get back to core business, cost control, and then of course the big world problems of interest rates, inflation, wars, climate. From the point that you're coming from as Equitise and crowdfunding platform, and we're seeing the kind of struggle for capital and startups kind of struggle as well. What's your kind of, what's your sentiment now, having come to Singapore versus kind of being in the weeds in Australia?
I think there's definitely a good, positive, buoyant sentiment generally in the Asia Pac. And some of what I'm hearing and seeing from people I'm talking to, there is a bias towards still investing in the right things. Everyone's obviously being much more efficient with allocation of any resources, and capital obviously is the most important one. From our perspective, obviously macro risk and volatility and uncertainty, looking after liquid investments makes it a bit harder, and particularly there's certain sort of high net worth and the sophisticated accredited investors probably hold back and sit on cash. At a wholesale institutional level, there's still money flowing in and people wanting to invest. I think people have obviously taken their foot off for a couple of quarters. I think beginning of next year it will start to come back, depending on the global macro environment. But from our perspective, and even looking at the US, equity crowdfunding has continued to grow and pick up some of the slack from VC. We're still getting good demand in Australia from the broader environment and retail investors. So I think it's been good to kind of reinforce that by seeing in Asia Pac there's still buy-in and excitement and interest from a lot of participants. So that opportunity to be able to continue to engage and work across Asia Pac, I think, is quite exciting too.
Certainly the discussions that I've been having with people that have been staying from the UK, the US and Asia over this last couple of days, everybody seems to be saying exactly the same thing. Seed, Series A, there's still things happening. There's appetite for kind of high risk, kind of low investment. This scaling stuff seems to be really struggling. So nobody wants to put 50 million or 100 million into a business, but they're happy to look at 5, 10 million.
Definitely. And look, even the earliest sort of seed, pre-seed, angel sort of space, or a lot of companies we help where we might be raising between $500,000 and $2 or $3 million for the sorts of companies. Historically and technically by the numbers, this is the best time to invest, and the optionality and to get these companies building out these solutions at this point is where you get the greatest returns. So if you go back to 2008 and time after that, a lot of the companies that are now sort of global leaders have come from that period. So investing when there is uncertainty equates to opportunity that companies can come through. There's more demand for people to solve certain things. So if you can sustain yourself and have a viable solution that people want, then you can succeed and you can attract more capital. So there's always going to be money at different stages because there's funds that need to invest. They might hold back for a short period of time, but they will come back to the market. So if you can validate and grow and expand and scale coming out of a period like now, you'll probably get better and easier access to that follow-on funding. So there is still a lot of people wanting to invest in early stage companies. There's more problems to be solved. There's greater awareness of some of these problems, and particularly with the likes of inflation and things where people are rationalising what they're investing in and what the returns are, then people start to think about what are the really valuable things they invest in. Valuations invariably take a bit of a hit. Were they overbaked last couple of years? Probably in most sectors. So is this just the cycle of just flattening off and rationalising? I think that's the case. So, yeah.
Cool. And next 12 months for Equitise, what have you got in store?
Well, we'll see what comes out of being up here, but we've been going. We just had a record financial year. This calendar year will probably be another record year. We're seeing a lot of sort of demand. There's more and more companies coming to us looking for how we service and how we differentiate ourselves in the space, which is good. We're starting to see some companies come through and generate returns or lists that we've raised money for previously. So we'll be growing the core business, hopefully, doubling the volume around that, and then there's some additional sort of new product lines and things we're bringing out.
Awesome. Well, Jonny, enjoy the rest of your trip, and see you back in Sydney.
Thank you.
Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.